Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy, brought to you today by Josh Edison and Dr. M. Dentith. Hello and welcome to the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy. It's an autumnal evening almost in Auckland, New Zealand.
Has the season officially changed yet?
Well, technically it's autumn. I mean, it's March. That means it's the start of autumn. But it's to the extent that I'm wearing a jacket and now have an actual lapel on which to stick a lapel mic. I, of course, being Josh Edison, and of course, as per usual, am sitting directly next to Dr. M. RX Dentith, sucking the last drops of whiskey out of his
skull.
Decanter, out of your skull, yes. Oh dear.
Now, after last week's rather tragic episode, I performed a slight modification to my brain to erase my memories of basically everything that's gone forward. So, Josh, tell the audience and myself, what is this podcast about? Why am I sitting here having set up lights? What are we going to talk about?
Right. Well, you may not be aware of this, but you are possibly New Zealand's foremost expert on the philosophy of conspiracy theories, and indeed it is
that's surprising, because the last thing I remember is being really into Doctor Who.
Yeah, no, you still are, in fairness, but also you have a academic career that's largely founded on the philosophical analysis of conspiracy theories.
That's marvellous. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, so we talk about it in this podcast every week. We record it and do that sort of stuff.
That explains the cameras.
That's what the camera's for, and the lapel mics, yes. And so generally you tend to take a sort of particularist approach to conspiracy theories, where you think that conspiracy theory as a pejorative is something we should avoid, and conspiracy theories themselves are not inherently irrational, which is not to say that certain in particular conspiracy theories are not inherently irrational, but the point is to evaluate each one on its merits.
That sounds very sensible. Are you sure that's my idea?
I'm pretty sure it's not mine. I didn't come up with it. That's for sure.
Well, it must be mine then.
Yep, and that's basically what we do. And we're going to do it now, I believe is the plan. And in light of the traumatic events of the last week or so, we're causing you to do the memory wipey thingy.
It's called trepanning. You put a needle into the brain. You basically excite some of the brain material. Memories sometimes just disappear.
Yeah.
Or you orgasm.
Well, it could be both.
It may well have been.
Cart, horse cart, you never know.
Horse cart.
But the point is, we thought this week we want to get away from the dreariness and doom and gloom, and just focus perhaps on the more frivolous, possibly sillier examples of conspiracy theories we can come up with. And indeed catch up on a couple of weeks' worth of news, because of course last week's was entirely eclipsed by the most major news event to happen in New Zealand in quite a long time, which means you kind of have 2 weeks worth of conspiratorial happenings to catch up on. So we're just sort of gonna romp through all of that. We're gonna have a freewheeling, fast and fancy-free frolic. Unscripted, yeah, no, the hell with scripts this week. We're just gonna have a bit of fun, hopefully. And maybe you'll learn a thing or two, but probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Shall we get to it?
I think so. Let's handle some news.
Breaking conspiracy theories in the news.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this at the end of last week's episode. One thing that I did want to talk about, getting away from the doom and gloom and horrible things with a mob killing.
Which somehow involves Childish Gambino?
Well, So a couple of weeks ago, Francesco Kelly, otherwise known as Frankie Boy, because of course he is, who was the head of
Frankie Boyle.
Not Frankie Boyle, no. Frankie Boy who's the head of the Gambino crime family.
See, when I read this, it was about Childish Gambino and Frankie Boyle, and I thought the story was going to go in a very different direction from the one it's going in now.
That is a team-up I'd like to see, though. But no, so he was murdered outside his home in Staten Island on or about March the 13th, I think it was. And so obviously criminal conspiracies started shooting up all over the place. The police thought, well, what's going on here? This guy's head of the family, shot outside his home. Must be some other family, some sort of kind of power play. People are trying to muscle in on his territory. I assume that's a thing people say. But then once it came out, the actual murder was caught on surveillance cameras, and the killer turned out to be some guy.
Just some guy.
Some guy called...
So you're saying big event, small cause. That sounds suspicious.
Well, yes, so it turned out that no, it wasn't a member of a rival criminal family. It wasn't anything to do with Mr. Kelly's mafia dealings in any way. It was a man called Anthony Comello, who was known to Mr. Kelly, but not actually part of his organisation as far as I'm aware. And according to the news that's come out, his motivation for killing the head of one of the bigger mob families in America was because he was a bit annoyed with the guy because Anthony Comello wanted to date his niece and Frankie Boy disapproved. And so, yes, Mr. Comello reacted to that by staging a shooting.
That sounds like a perfectly sensible American thing to do.
Well, yes, from what I could gather, he quote unquote accidentally crashed his pickup truck or something into Kelly's car parked outside his house. When Kelly came out, he sort of was like, "Oh, hey, Mr. Kelly, I'm so sorry, look at this." And then when he went to bend over to like pick up his number plate, I think they said that had fallen off his car, he pulled out a gun and shot him a whole bunch of times. So probably not the smartest thing you could do, really. So there's a lot of talk of how the hell are we going to, how is this guy going to survive to see his trial? How are we possibly going to keep him safe in prison? But so that got rid of the sort of criminal conspiracy theories that were perhaps going around. But fortunately for us, he kept the conspiracy theme going because when he showed up in court for his first appearance in the courtroom, he was holding up his hands towards the reporters on which with a ballpoint pen he'd doodled a bunch of stuff, including phrases like MAGA forever, United we stand, MAGA, and Patriots in charge, and had a great big letter Q drawn right in the middle of his palm.
Now, see, I think you should have drawn a letter Q on your palm for that visual joke for the people watching the video.
I see your point, but on the other hand, I would then have had to walk around with a giant Q on the palm of my hand, even for a short amount of time. And frankly, that just sounds tiresome.
It's because you don't have a MAGA hat.
Well, yep, no, I do need one of those as well, perhaps. Yeah, so this guy appears to be a genuine sort of hardline Trumpy QAnon type follower, and this seems to be the direction his defence is going in because his lawyer has been talking up the fact that he's been influenced by this far-right hate speech and conspiracy theories. There's been talk of a drastic change in his personality over the last couple of months leading up to the shooting and so on. So I don't know if that's genuine or if they're playing it up to as some sort of defence tactic, or both. I don't know. But yeah, so that's been an interesting case of a man who was so infantile, so immature that his only approach to conflict resolution was bloody violence and murder. So it's just a shame, really, that his immaturity has meant he'll now have nothing to do with that crime family, and he will indeed never be a childish Gambino.
I like the way you brought that home. Things which I don't like to bring home are notes about the March 15th attack down in Christchurch. And one such note was found outside of a mosque in San Diego, which had just been burnt down, which is leading people to believe that the note and the arson are in fact connected, and the burning of the mosque was a hate crime associated with the manifesto of the terrorists who, of course, engaged in the shooting of 50 people down in Otatahi just a few weeks ago.
Yes, now, as I believe we mentioned last week, the Killer's Manifesto is now classed as objectionable material in New Zealand, which means you're not allowed to possess copies of it.
Or distribute it.
Or distribute it unless you have some sort of dispensation. Now, you sought a dispensation.
I have engaged in the process of applying for an exemption for having a copy of the Great Replacement Manifesto. Actually, a lot of organisations are doing this. Apparently, almost every media outlet in the country is applying for an exemption for the outlet to have a copy on file so that journalists can access it. Apparently, there's also talk that universities are going to do the same thing. There's a very open question as to whether it's ever going to be stored in the National Library. And because it's a publication from this country, technically it probably will be. It'll be interesting to see how they control access to that particular document, but that's a matter that will be coming up
So were you successful in your application?
I haven't actually submitted the email at this point. Apparently, once the email is in, it takes about a day or so for it to be processed.
But there is a cost attached?
There is an administrative fee, but it's not particularly high.
Okay, well, you could dip into the old patron funds. Surely that's the sort of thing they're for.
It's
Mind you,
true.
it's stuff we could never ever broadcast on this podcast, and indeed it's something I have absolutely no interest in seeing myself, but it would be useful for your academic purposes.
So we've got a copy of the Great Replacement Manifesto on this USB stick. Josh, you want to look at it? No. Well, what should I do with it? Just put it back in its box. Fine, I'll put it back in its box.
Put you back in your box.
Ooh, But yes, actually, maybe we will use some of the funds to buy an exemption for a terrorist manifesto.
Yeah.
That's what your Patreon monies, patrons, are going to go towards.
I'm sure that's what they'd want.
Actually, they probably would.
So moving on. Okay, so we've been trying to steer clear of anything Trump related this year because, quite frankly, we're sick of talking about the guy, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing about the guy. But we can't go past the fact that Robert Mueller has actually released his report-ish, sort of.
Well, I mean, the report has been released, but the only people who seem to have read it are William Barr, the Attorney General of the United States of America, and Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States of America. And Barr has released a 4-page memo which basically summarizes his takeaways from the Mueller report, which is broken down in kind of 2 sections. One section on collusion, one section on obstruction of justice complaints about the President of the United States, one Donald J. Trump, and basically says, look, there's no evidence of collusion by members of the government with Russia, and there's not enough to charge the president with obstruction of justice. Now, of course, people have pointed out there are 2 issues here with respect to the fact that we haven't seen the report, or we've got, actually there are 3 issues. All we've got is Barr's representation. The first issue is the definition of collusion is rather narrow. So it talks about members of the government working with members of a foreign government. And as many analysts have pointed out, the whole way that Russia works these days is they farm their political activism off to private companies. So you might have evidence of a private company in Russia which is attached to the government but only ostensibly working with people in the US, and that wouldn't count as collusion under Mueller's definition. The other thing, of course, is that Barr was appointed by Donald Trump, and Barr is the person who said, look, there's not enough evidence to show that the president has committed an obstruction of justice offence. Which is problematic because Barr, once again, was appointed by the president. And that's the third point. The appointment of Barr is an issue here.
Before he was appointed Attorney General, didn't he basically completely unprompted send off a letter saying how the Mueller investigation was a load of bollocks, and essentially saying if I were Attorney General, I'd make sure that you never saw any charges from it?
Yes, and that was kind of seen as an audition for becoming Attorney General.
Yeah.
So once we see the report, and there are open questions as to whether we will ever see the full report, so the Attorney General has said there are elements of the report that will need to be kept secret from people outside of Congress because of ongoing investigations, names and the like, so there's going to be some censorship of the report if Barr has his way. Congress, of course, would like the full report released. Even the Senate would like the full report released. There's an open question as to when it will be released to the public or to Congress itself. And until such time we actually see the report, it's actually hard to know what to make of it. As one person on Twitter pointed out, I didn't actually note who they were at the time, imagine if Bill Clinton's Attorney General, upon receiving the Starr report, went, well, I've read the report and there's no evidence whatsoever that the president has engaged in any untoward behaviour whatsoever.
Did you see Monica Lewinsky's reply to that tweet?
No.
No, I only saw that one because I saw someone saying, yeah, imagine if Bill Clinton's Attorney General had read the Starr report and then just issued a little summary of it that said nothing had gone wrong, and Monica Lewinsky just replied, if fucking only. But She's a funny lady, Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
But, it has been a slightly weird look. So Barr comes out and says, yep, the Mueller report completely exonerates Donald Trump.
Barr says...
It neither exonerates nor...
So it's not. It doesn't have the threshold for criminal activity, but it doesn't exonerate the president. It was Sarah Sanders. Is it Sarah Sanders who's the current White House press secretary? She's the yeah, that's right. We are making with Sarah. There was another person at some earlier point. And she said completely exonerates the president, as Trump has said, but as Barr points out, actually, no. There's enough there to at least show moral failure, if not actual criminal activity.
But at any rate, we have some people saying this report is exonerates, is completely exonerating. It's super exonerating. If anything, it's a little bit too exonerating.
To the point where they're now saying we need to have a witch hunt to investigate the investigators for sedition and treason.
And yet this super exonerating report that completely exonerates Trump from everything, when you say, so can we see this report that completely proves you? And they're like, no, you can't. You don't need to see it. Just trust me. It totally exonerates him.
It's exonerating. It's really, really
my girlfriend
exonerating.
who lives in Canada just told me so. So again, don't want to spend much time on this because we're sick of the whole thing. But who knows what will happen in the future? Just in general, but also in this case.
In this case, this particular story.
So that was all the new stuff we had to talk about. But we have a couple of updates to ongoing stories, which we traditionally handle in an updates section.
Let's play that sting.
Updates and retractions.
So I suppose the big news, or at least one of the bits of big news, is the whole Jussie Smollett case.
Yeah, so Jussie Smollett's case, and this I just read about today, I assume it's a pretty recent development. Jussie Smollett's case has been dismissed, which is not the same as saying he was found not guilty.
No. So for those of you who don't recall the Jussie Smollett case, Jussie Smollett is an African-American gay actor who came to fame on the show Empire, who...
I think you'll find he came to fame in the classic Emilio Estevez series, The Mighty Ducks.
Really? I wasn't aware of that.
He was one of the Mighty Ducks. But anyway, sorry.
Who about a month ago now claimed to have been the victim of a hate crime in Chicago where he was attacked by two mugger thugs. It quickly became clear that the police in Chicago thought this was a hoax, and they then started pressing charges against Smollett for faking the attack. And now the prosecutor in Chicago has gone, we're withdrawing charges kind of for a procedural motion.
So there's this thing called an alternative to prosecution. And that's what they've done here. So his case has been dismissed in exchange for his completion of several conditions, and I believe the exact details of these conditions haven't been released yet.
But we do know that there is basically volunteer service he has done and will do, and also donating part of his bond to the city.
So it sort of seems one of these kind of compromise situations where he isn't required to plead guilty, so it's not officially found that he's guilty, but on the other hand they do still sort of get something out of him. Although apparently, then I just read this afternoon that supposedly the FBI is now looking into this because they think something is maybe a little bit fishy with the whole affair, and maybe he's being let off lightly on account of being, I don't know, a celebrity or rich, or I don't know. Although wasn't the theory that he'd done the hoax attack because he wanted to get paid more?
That was a motivation that was put forward in the first week or so, but I have a feeling that no one's actually entirely sure if it was a hoax, what the motivation behind the hoax actually was.
And now the other thing, so this got lost fairly quickly, quite understandably, but we should probably have another look at it because a couple of days before the Christchurch shootings in Wellington, James
Which
Shaw,
we mentioned on the podcast.
We did mention, yep. James Shaw, co-leader of the Green Party here, was assaulted on his way into Parliament. And supposedly the guy who did it jumped out of a van, recognised him, and had started saying something about the UN before running up and smacking him in the face.
Migration Compact.
So yes, that had, prior to the Christchurch shootings, that had been one of the bigger sort of right-wing talking points, the UN Migration Pact, which, as kind of like the Agenda 21 stuff we've talked about before, it's one of these things that's a non-binding resolution that basically gives you some guidelines in the UN saying, hey guys, it'd be super peachy keen if you treated migration like this, and does not force anyone to do anything, but it's been jumped upon by sort of the far-right crowd as saying, look, this is the UN, they're going to take over our migration, they're going to tell us
the far-right,
how
but
to do
also
it.
the centre-right in this country. So this was one of the things which kind of came out after the March 15th attack. So the National Party, our centre-right opposition party at this particular point in time, had a petition page up on their website asking for people to sign a petition to make sure the current Labour Green New Zealand First coalition government wouldn't sign up to the UN Compact on Migration. And that page disappeared.
It disappeared mighty quick.
And National's claim was, oh, no. That petition ended several weeks ago, and we routinely take pages down. That page was taken down weeks before March the 15th. And then people showed how it was still in Google Cache, and also people had screenshots from the day, because after the event, people were pointing out that National was still pushing conspiracy theories about the compact on migration, which led to National having to do a mea culpa and then claiming the only reason why the page went down was due to an emotional junior staffer.
An emotional junior staffer.
Which isn't really the best way to explain this, because A, you're going, the sensible minds, we didn't take it down, it was an emotional junior staffer, and also it kind of indicates that they were being emotional, they weren't acting rationally. And maybe they should have taken that page down.
Yes, I don't know. So yeah, I mean, at the time, when we first mentioned it, we thought, well, let's see how this develops, because everything was all a little bit unknown. But it kind of, the whole affair has just kind of disappeared, really, because a day or two later, we suddenly got something a lot more prominent to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, there were big discussions at the time of the attack as to whether this would kind of end the way in which our MPs interact with the public, because as a nation state, we have MPs who are very approachable. You can talk to them in bars, in pubs, in the supermarket. They walk along streets without any security whatsoever. And there was a fear that if we get one attack on an MP, maybe we might get copycat attacks, and maybe our MPs will become a more rarefied, hard-to-get-to class. But it does actually seem that after March 15th, MPs are increasingly active in their constituencies.
Yeah.
And we have kind of forgotten that very recently, one of the MPs, a co-leader for a party in government, was attacked on the street in the nation's capital.
Now, of course, the UN Migration Pact, Pact on Migrate, whatever it is, the thing.
Compact migration, it's just really small migration by the UN.
Has been a talking point amongst sort of alt-right circles, and anyone who's notably anti-migrant was very much opposed to that. Did it show up in the manifesto at all, specifically?
No, the manifesto talks about migration. It doesn't actually make any particular claim. But many of the people talking about the Great Replacement thesis have gone, well, you know, the UN, tap, tap of the nose, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more.
So, yeah, so we have a man assaulted on the street by someone talking about the UN Migration Pact. And then a couple of days later, we have the Christchurch shootings performed by someone with a manifesto with a decidedly anti-immigration bent. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's no suggestion that the two events are directly related, and yet they seem to be sort of, symptomatic of the same swelling in white supremacist anti-immigration stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I say, this entire event was kind of swamped by what happened basically the next day.
The next day, pretty much, yeah.
So whether we'll actually come back to revisit it or whether it's just kind of forgotten about, I don't know.
It kind of feels like it has been, yeah. So I don't know, we'll have to see. But for now, it's just kind of filed under,
Yeah, very much,
And speaking of, that's it for the news updates. But let's go into the main part of the episode, which I think will contain its fair share of, as well.
Yeah, 3,
That was more of a Goofy being a cowboy or something. Yeah. Anyway, enough silly noises. On with the episode.
So Josh, you've wanted to talk about this for a while, the concave Earth thesis.
Yeah. Why did it... I've forgotten why it came up. It was a couple of episodes ago.
Something about Chuds, interior of the Earth.
It was something that we mentioned in passing a couple of episodes ago. I haven't even gone back to look up why we started talking about it, but somebody came up with mentioned the theory of the concave Earth theory. Now, we've talked about hollow Earth theories before.
Where we live on the outside of the Earth and things live on the inside. But Josh, tell us about the concave Earth.
Yeah, so the concave Earth theory, which was new to me at the time. Oh, no, it was the episode about... all the questions, what's the craziest conspiracy theory you've come across in your scientific area? Yep. And that was one of them. So the concave Earth theory says that the Earth is hollow and we live on the inside.
Yep. You may think you don't understand how horizons work now, but believe me, horizons going to work very differently in your understanding in just a few minutes' time.
So when we look up into the night sky at the stars and the planets and what have you, what we're actually looking at is the center of our planet. And in order to account for this, people have to get fairly creative with the laws of physics. There's a lot of talk of sort of, how light moves in a circle, so it appears to us that the ground is stretching away from us horizontally, but that's just because the curvature of the light curves around the curved surface of the Earth as it comes back to us, so it all just appears to be laid out in a straight line. And they have to talk about how the closer you get to the center of the Earth, I forget exactly how it's like time slows down or space becomes compressed or something. So the closer to the center, the slower everything becomes, so that it's impossible to ever reach the center of the Earth because everything becomes so compressed down and time some stuff timey-wimey. I don't even know, but that's how there can appear to be whole galaxies and universes up there, but it's because all of it is just compressed down into this as it reaches the point at the center of the Earth, which basically means that Saturn is closer to us than Spain, which is nice.
Well, that sorts out my summer holiday this year.
But the best thing I found about it. First stopping at Wikipedia, of course, because it's 2019 and that's what the internet is these days, told me about this fellow called Cyrus Teed, who is a fan of the hollow Earth theory and apparently the concave Earth theory as well. So he founded a group. He had a scheme called cellular cosmogony, which I assume...
Great band name.
Yeah, and which I think was sort of a fractally kind of pattern thing, so the whole universe is like a cell. There's a cell in both, like a nucleus. And he founded a group called the Koreshan Unity, based on this notion, which he called Koreshanity, of course. He had a colony in Florida. His followers claim to have experimentally verified the concavity of the Earth's curvature through surveys of the Florida coastline making use of rectilineator equipment.
I bet they use rectilineator equipment.
And but then even better, a variety of 20th century German writers have published works advocating the hollow Earth hypothesis, or Hohlwertlehre. But it has now. This is a great quote here from Wikipedia. It has even been reported, although apparently without historical documentation, that Adolf Hitler was influenced by concave hollow Earth ideas and sent an expedition in an unsuccessful attempt to spy on the British fleet by pointing infrared cameras up at the sky. I particularly like that, apparently without historical documentation.
So basically, I had a dream.
Basically, yes, I made this thing up, but it sounds interesting.
Although, were you at Nick's when we watched that Hollow Earth Nazi film with one of the Buseys?
I saw half of it or something. Either I had to go or I showed up late and only saw the end. But I do know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, that was
Nazis in the Hollow Earth.
It's one of the asylum mockbusters, and it's on the notion that the Nazis built a base in the Hollow Earth, and of course it houses Robo Hitler, because everything houses Robo Hitler in that style of film.
So yeah, I was quite surprised to see it was had such a pedigree, quite frankly. I even read an interesting article that sort of took that and kind of made a rumination on sort of falsification in science and Popper and all that business by talking about how, these theories for the concave, how physics works in the concave Earth environment are basically internally consistent and completely account for all the same observations that contemporary physics does.
With very different assumptions.
With incredibly different assumptions. And so, yes, certainly would, if you were to choose between modern physics and concave Earth physics, Occam's razor would suggest that modern physics is the way to go. But as we all know, Occam's razor isn't a hard and fast rule. It's just kind of a guideline. But yes, it was interesting. Just sort of shows you that you can actually come up with all sorts of wild and wacky theories that account for the same data, which I assume means therefore that science is bullshit and we should just believe whatever we want.
No, and the reason why, have you watched the Netflix documentary Behind the Curve, the Flat Earth documentary?
I haven't. I thought it might be a little depressing.
It's hilarious.
Okay.
But what's interesting about it is it shows that the flat earthers are very good at science. So they devise 3 experiments over the course of the documentary to prove the Earth is flat. So one experiment basically is measuring for curvature using satellites. One experiment is designed to show that there's no curvature by shining lasers, things like that. And the thing is, they develop very good experiments that would show that the Earth is flat or the Earth is curved. The problem is they keep on getting the wrong results. They get results that show curvature, and so they then develop a new experiment to replace the old one in the hope the new experiment will show flatness.
Well, that doesn't sound like a good application of the scientific method.
Well, no, so it's a good application. They're very good at developing experiments. They're just very bad at accepting the results of those experiments.
Yeah, that's a shame.
I actually would recommend watching the documentary. It's remarkably even-handed in its portrayal, but the stuff about the experiments they do is really quite fascinating.
And there is talk of an expedition to Antarctica by a bunch of flat earthers at the moment, presumably looking for the edge or those Pac-Man portals where we wrap around to the other side.
Why would one of the members of U2 be in Antarctica with flat earthers so desperate to find them? Do they think that that bit from the U2 music video, Elevation, which belongs to the Tomb Raider film, which is the best U2 video of all time, do they think that he's taken that Egyptian solar disk to Antarctica and they need it to prove flatness? Is that what they're doing? Is that it? I've completely lost you now, haven't I?
No, I'm actually somewhat dumbstruck at the way you managed to take that train of thought and just go with it and go with it and go with it. It was quite impressive.
I do love that music video. It's an awful film.
Don't actually know the music video, I'm afraid.
Oh,
I know the song.
It's great.
Don't know the music video.
No, it's great. It's good. The Edge is basically CGI'd into scenes with Lara Croft.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Now, one last thing before we leave the hollow earths and concave earths and flat earths. I came across an interesting theory also while looking into this, which is the formerly flat earth theory, which is the theory that Earth was flat in the time of the dinosaurs, but then the meteor impact or something like that killed the dinosaurs smashed the flat Earth and caused it to sort of buckle and fold in on itself, causing the flat Earth to become a spherical Earth, which is of course hollow, and now all the dinosaurs live on the inside because the Earth folded up around them, and then we managed to get out and live on the outside of it now. And unfortunately, having read that theory, I then couldn't find any evidence that it was anything other than a bit of a joke and a funny thing somebody thought of one time. And as lots of people pointed out, isn't that the plot of the Super Mario Brothers movie?
But that's a different dimension.
It is, yes. And then other people had to correct them. Well, obviously, as everyone who's seen the Super Mario Brothers movie starring Bob Hoskins and Dennis Hopper knows, and I'm assuming that's all of you and everyone in this room. Yes, it is in fact the meteor caused the Earth to split into two parallel dimensions, and the dinosaurs went off into another dimension, and the humans stayed here. And then there was Dennis Hopper with a bad haircut who was somehow King Koopa.
Still, I think one of the most bizarre video game to movie adaptations of all time.
It was high concept, I'll give it that. Somebody thought, how do we take a game where a couple of Italian plumbers jump on the backs of turtles and lizards and make a movie out of that? And somebody thought, okay.
And we're going to take seriously the fact that they're plumbers. We're going to make that a very important plot point. Yeah.
And they are against evil.
Because you are aware that
people.
Mario is no longer a plumber.
Isn't he? No?
No, so in the press materials for Super Mario Odyssey, the most recent canonical Super Mario game, they talk about how it's one of his former occupations.
Oh, I see. Now he's a hat enthusiast.
Basically, yes.
Right.
And a sentient hat enthusiast.
Hat. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a Nintendo person, so I have very little exposure to the Super Mario Brothers game series, unfortunately.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Bonk. Well, yes, obviously everybody, you can't not know that. Okay, so that's enough. That's enough cellular cosmogonies for one time. I think, what have you got to chuck in the pile?
QAnon, the comic book.
Yes, there is a QAnon comic book. May not be suitable for an audio podcast, but
I just thought
you
we
can give
would
us the rundown.
Just talk about it briefly. So this was linked on Twitter. It's a Imager account. It's called QAnon. It's by Mega Man Comics.
It has 30 big pages.
Although it actually doesn't.
Maybe it will.
Yeah,
maybe
it will.
Aspirational.
And basically the premise of the first issue is that Hillary Clinton's really, really pissed off she didn't win the election, and that she's being consulted. So Barack Obama is consoling her. Meanwhile, Trump is actually getting on with job. And basically it's a photo montage album. So people are just...
a sort of a black and white Photoshop filter.
A very cheap filter put over the top.
Yeah.
Then yes, it's about 8 pages of exactly what you would think a QAnon comic book would be about, where the bad people are Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and Trump's just a really, really nice guy.
Yes, whereas Hillary Clinton is a foul-mouthed lunatic who's screaming at Obama saying, "You said the swing states were rigged, but he has everything now. I hope you know if I go down, we all go down." And then Obama says no one is going down, quote unquote, and doesn't appear to be a sexual euphemism. So this
then you get mobs of rabid leftists spill into the streets of DC in droves. Fear and political outrage from losing the election is set in. The polls mislead the brainwashed masses into a frenzy.
Then we have a full-page spread of that says his name was Seth Rich. And a picture of what
Seth Rich has
Seth Rich.
An additional eye in the middle of his forehead.
Yes, he has a third eye and bullet holes and and so
also stigmata. Is that it? Does look like stigmata.
Could just be shadows on his hands, but you never. Yeah, he's
no. That's definitely a nail going into that hand.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. So there's something. So Seth Rich appears to be some sort of Christ-like martyr who died for our sins. Then we have a summary of it. Claims he was, in retaliation, the DNC leadership ordered a hit on Seth Rich at the hands of MS-13 thugs. Those good old MS-13 thugs, not just happy. What are they in real life? They're Mexican drug cartel, are they?
Yeah, and I believe not as major a gang as Trump has made them out to be.
No.
But yes, so it's a comic book. It's on Imager.com. It's called QAnon the Comic Book. And kind of thing that we really couldn't devote an entire episode to.
No.
But it is kind of interesting.
It's a thing. It exists
sure
as an
a
artifact.
thing. It is a thing which exists in the world.
I don't know there's anything to recommend it from a political
or even
indeed artistic standpoint. Yep. But
it does exist.
It does exist. I cannot take that away from you. It does exist. But perhaps instead, to redeem yourself, you could tell me about the Romanian David Icke.
I could. Lauren Fortuna. Now, for Romanian listeners out there, this also might be a surprise, because it turns out that Lauren Fortuna, who died... Oh, now I've actually forgotten.
I have.
Yeah, 20... Yep. Oh, yes, it was. Sorry, it was that recent. Kind of has become a forgotten figure in Romanian politics. So Lauren Fortuna was one of the heroes of the December 1989 revolution that ousted control of the country away from the communists. And he was a member of the party at the time. After the revolution, he obtained a PhD from the Faculty of Electronics and Telecommunications at the Polytechnic Institute of Bucharest, and actually ended up holding several patents and was the author of several technical papers concerning telecommunications in Romania. So had the smarts. But at some point in the early 2000s, he started to claim that he was receiving telepathic communications from members of the higher echelons of the galactic government. And because of these communications, Fortuna was able to reveal that there are several civilizations and civilizational species living on the planet Earth, properly known as Gaia.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
So
there's... have a car.
I suspect he probably did. Romanians do like their cars.
That's good then.
Yeah. So there's the native gorilla civilization. That's a civilization that is native to this planet. Then there's the invading snake civilization, where we've got elements there of David Icke and his alien shape-shifting reptiles. The spider civilization, although sometimes the spider civilization is also the scorpion civilization. It's basically the civilization of any small creature which has an exoskeleton. The creepy
civilization, I believe, is the scientific term.
The dolphin civilization,
indeed,
which is shades of Douglas Adams, truth be told.
Yes, yeah.
And then a lot of other minor species.
Well, that just sounds racist.
Yeah, it probably gets worse. So the gorillas are the native civilization, and they are a kindly and peaceful people. And they are the ones who are in theory meant to be in control of the world, and luckily are in control of the Romanian government.
Well, that's good, as long as the Romanian government is controlled by gorillas.
And you can tell that they're actually gorillas because gorillas like throwing things. And it turns out people throw balls of paper and the like in the government chamber all the time.
And literally nowhere else in the world. I assume that's where he's getting at?
No, I don't think he's going quite that far. He's just showing that the fact that Romanian politicians like to throw things.
Shows they're gorillas.
Yeah.
I get you.
And Fortuna would go on TV to appear on chat shows and the like, and he would specify which MPs are gorillas and which MPs are from the rival snake civilization or are secret spiders. So basically, if a politician got on the wrong side of Fortuna, he would go, oh, actually, I was wrong about them being gorilla. Actually, they're really a snake or a spider or something of that particular kind. And if they were a snake or a spider, they were working for some foreign power against the goodness of the gorillas in Parliament. Now, you might be thinking this sounds an awful lot like David Icke's alien shape-shifting reptile hypothesis.
Also like the Stop the Planet of the Apes, I Want to Get Off musical from The Simpsons.
Oh, now
because frankly, the entire time you're talking about that, all I could imagine was one of these politicians grabbing him and him saying, "Get your paws off me, you dirty ape."
He can talk, he can talk, he can talk. I can sing. help me, Dr. Zayas, 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 Dr. Zayas. Oh, Dr. Zayas.
Is that the best musical parody ever made?
Yes,
I think it is.
Actually is. Okay, so can I what's the line about the piano? Because there's a line that precedes it. Okay, so can I play the piano anymore? Well, of course you can. Well, I couldn't before.
Yeah.
I hate every ape I see, from chimpanzee to chimpanzee. No, you'll never make a monkey out of me. Oh my God, I was wrong. It was us all along.
You finally
made a monkey. Yes, we finally made a monkey. Yes, you finally made a monkey out of me.
I love you, Dr. Zayas.
Yes. Although, of course, actually nothing beats the... So, have you heard of The Planet of the Apes, The Planet, or the musical? But anyway. So it turns out that Fortuna and Icke didn't get along particularly well.
But they were aware of each other.
Yes. So when Icke came to Romania, Fortuna said, "Oh, he's just ripping me off." And Icke, who is not the kind of person who likes people to cast aspersions on his theory, no, you're ripping me off. And basically, they didn't get on particularly well whatsoever.
Oh, that's a shame.
As I say, he died in 2016. And basically is now largely forgotten about, because even before he died, he'd stopped being kind of mainstay on Romanian late night TV. For a period of time in the kind of late 2000s, early 2010s, he was invited onto TV a lot because people liked laughing at him. And eventually he worked out
got a bit
that...
sad, or?
Yeah, he eventually worked out they weren't inviting him because of his insightful political commentary. They are inviting him because people like to laugh along at home.
Oh, that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
I see here you say that some of these presidents were snakes who worked for the Queen of England, so he did get the good old reptilian royals business in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's an awful lot which is like Icke. He did leave writings behind, but they're all in Romanian. There's no translations to English whatsoever. If I ever had the funding, I'd be quite tempted to get someone to translate Fortuna into English so the world could be aware of Lauren Fortuna. I don't know why the world needs to be more aware of alien shape-shifting reptile conspiracy theories, but I feel that Romania has something to add to that discussion.
Was Ceausescu the communists? Was he the one that got...
He was,
out?
yes.
Right.
Yeah, he was the leader of the Romanian Communist Party, and he was the one who was killed during the December Revolution.
Right, because basically my only knowledge of Romanian history is Tim Curry's speech from the movie Congo.
Great speech, bad Romanian accent.
The best accent ever. It was Herkimer Homolka or something, free from the chains of Ceausescu, and so on and so forth. Another excellent film which I assume everybody in the world has seen. Ernie Hudson, brilliant.
I haven't seen it for a long time, though.
No, that's because it's awful. But brilliant.
Yes, it's one of those films, it really should not be revisited.
I think it lives the best life in our memories, I think. I think we'd only sully our experiences by actually subjecting ourselves to it again.
Yeah. Also, I have a feeling it's actually based on a really, really racist myth of the white gorilla kingdom in Africa, which actually has a fairly horrible racist background.
Does it?
Yeah, because it's the idea that the intelligent apes are white.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I don't know. Michael Crichton book. In fact, it's one of the few Michael Crichton books that isn't about how technology will kill us all, actually. Strange.
The other one was that time travel one they made a film with Billy Connolly in.
Yeah, never saw that one.
I read the book, it was awful. But I should kind of think that Michael Crichton was not a particularly good writer of prose.
Yeah, I don't know. He was just very good at picking up the significant emerging technologies and then showing how one day they'll kill us all.
Like time travel.
Well, apart from that, but he sort of gets, cloning and genetic technologies will result in dinosaurs eating us, and the terminal man about electrodes in your brain treatment technologies will cause a person to go crazy and kill us. And then there was that other one about nanites, which will Kill us all. Cheery fellow, Michael Crichton. I'm glad he's dead. That's not true. I'm not glad he's dead. He seemed a lovely fellow.
Climate change skeptic.
You know.
Yeah, but also climate change skeptic.
Well, that was just the nanites, I guess.
And also the dinosaurs.
Anyway, so that was all we had for a palate cleanser of more frivolous, sillier conspiracy
something we
theories.
needed to do to be able to go back to discussing things in a slightly more, well, I say not serious tone, but in a more
reverential, respectful.
We needed to be able to do something to kind of wipe the taste of last week out of our mouths. Yes. But for those patrons, we've got more content coming up after the break. We're going to be talking about uterus donations. We'll also be talking about a person from Christchurch who claims to have actually orchestrated the March 15 attacks, and how Uri Geller is going to stop Brexit with his mind.
I assume that's how he does everything, though, with his mind.
I
Turns
hope
on
so.
the television with his mind. Puts the kettle on with his mind.
Eats breakfast with his mind.
Yeah. Now, we're also going to be releasing last week's bonus content for everyone to review. That was the plan, was it not? Yes. Yeah. So, where we sort of went into a bit more detail about the specific false flags stuff around the Christchurch shootings last week, which was an interesting discussion. It probably deserves a wider audience. So we'll have one. Yeah. But that's us for now, I think. So unless you're a bonus patron and therefore one of the best and brightest people in the world, we will say goodbye. And to the rest of you, we will say see you in a minute.
Indeedy. You've been listening to the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy, starring Josh Addison and Dr. MRX Dentith, which is written, researched, recorded and produced by Josh and M. You can support the podcast by becoming a patron via its Podbean or Patreon campaigns. And if you need to get in contact with either Josh or M, you can email them at podcastconspiracy@gmail.com or check their Twitter accounts, Monkey Fluids and Conspiracism. And remember, they're coming to get you, Barbara.